Vienna, 1903, just as the bells of St. Stephen's Cathedral struck noon and snow began to fall in slow, deliberate flakes over the imperial stables behind Schönbrunn Palace. Julian Granger pulled his wool-lined gloves tighter and stepped back from the chestnut mare he'd just finished grooming. His breath smoked in the cold, curling into the air as he glanced toward the palace's east wing. That was where she'd be now. Marguerite Caldwell, American by birth, cousin to the Duchess von Hohenberg, and far too highborn to be speaking with a stable hand. But she did. "Julian," she called softly, boots crunching over the gravel path, her cloak drawn close and hood low against the wind. Her cheeks were pink from the cold, her lips parted slightly as she caught her breath. "I wasn't sure if you'd still be out here." He bowed reflexively, then straightened. "You told me to wait." She smiled, but it trembled. "I needed to see you." He looked around quickly. A footman passed at a distance, uninterested. The guards were changing posts on the other end of the wall. Julian opened the stable door and stepped aside. Inside, it smelled of leather and hay. The warmth was faint, but it shielded them from the snow. She removed her gloves slowly, eyes fixed on his. "I got your note," she whispered. "I didn't mean to send it," he said. "It was meant for my brother, where he was helping me with something. I must have switched the envelopes." Marguerite's lips parted. "So, the part where you said you dreamed of me every single night, that was a mistake." He froze. "Yes, but it wasn't a lie." A silence bloomed between them, filled only by the shifting hooves of the horses behind them. "Do you know what would happen if my uncle found out?" she asked. Her voice was low, but not afraid. "He's already arranged a match for me. Baron Richter, 46 years old. Smells like cigars and vinegar." Julian stared at her. "You can't marry that man." Her eyes glittered. "Then stop me." He took a step forward and stopped. "Marguerite, I work with horses. You dine with archdukes." "You think I care?" she asked. "I've been paraded through every salon from Budapest to Paris. Not one of them ever looked at me the way you do." He didn't mean to do it. He meant to reach past her, to open the tack room door behind. But she turned toward him at that very moment, and his lips brushed hers soft, startled, unplanned. He stepped back instantly. "I didn't mean." But her hand caught his coat. Her fingers trembled where they held him. "Don't apologize. I kissed you by mistake," he said, heart thudding so loud he could barely hear his own voice. "But your heart meant it," she said quietly. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Outside, the bells tolled the quarter hour. She pulled away first, her face unreadable now, and reached into the folds of her cloak. "A duel's been called," she said. "My cousin's husband, he heard about us. Someone told him they saw me slip into the stables last week. He confronted Baron Richter, and now the barons demanded satisfaction." Julian's jaw tightened. "Who's he fighting?" "My cousin's husband, Count Emmerich. But the baron insisted I be present, to see which man defends my honor." She hesitated. "If Emmerich loses, the baron will marry me by Easter." Julian's hands curled into fists. "Then I'll challenge him." "You can't," she whispered. "You're not a noble." "I don't care. But they do." Julian stepped forward again. "Then I'll fight him anyway. I'll find a way. Nobles bleed like anyone else." She looked up at him, eyes shining now with something fierce. "Then meet me at dawn, behind the orangery. I'll bring someone who can help." "Who?" "My secret tutor," she said, breath catching. "He taught me German, Latin, how to write letters in cipher. He owes me, and he knows how to handle a pistol." Julian blinked. "You planned all this?" "I planned nothing," she said. "But I'm not going to be handed off to some vinegar-scented baron because I was born into the wrong family. I'm done waiting for someone else to save me." A gust of cold air swept in as she opened the stable door. She turned back just once, her hood falling slightly as she looked over her shoulder. "Don't be late." Then she was gone, boots vanishing into the snow. Julian stood there, heart hammering in his chest, the taste of that accidental kiss still burning on his lips. He hadn't meant to kiss her, but now, he knew he'd never be able to let her go. The sky had not yet lightened when Julian stepped along the frost-hardened gravel behind the Schönbrunn orangery. The citrus trees had long been moved indoors for winter, and the empty glass house loomed behind him like a sleeping cathedral. His boots crunched with each step, the cold biting through the soles. He had never seen this part of the palace grounds so utterly still. Marguerite appeared from the hedge walk, her cloak dark against the snow, carrying a parcel wrapped in oilcloth. Beside her walked a man older than Julian by perhaps 20 years, with a scholar's gait and a limp in one leg. He wore a simple wool coat, and his eyes, pale and unblinking, studied Julian with a disconcerting calm. "This is Herr Gustav," she said, pausing before them. "He taught me to read Cicero and to shoot straight." Julian gave a slight nod. Gustav offered no greeting, only opened the parcel and withdrew 2 dueling pistols, polished and heavy, resting in a velvet-lined case. He set it on a low stone bench without ceremony. "Which hand?" Gustav asked. Julian hesitated. "Right. You'll keep your thumb behind the hammer," Gustav said. "Not above. Most men break their fingers otherwise." Marguerite stepped back, folding her arms tightly. She did not look away as Gustav handed Julian one of the pistols. "I'm not a killer," Julian murmured. "You're not here to kill," Gustav said. "You're here to end a question." Julian gripped the handle more tightly. "And if he shoots first?" "Then you move," Gustav answered. "Fast." Marguerite broke her silence. "There's no honor in this. Only consequences. If you withdraw now, I won't think less of you." "You wouldn't," Julian said. "But I would." She didn't answer. A gust of wind caught the edge of her cloak, and she turned to fasten it more securely. Julian watched her hands quick, certain, unadorned by rings or vanity, and felt an ache settle in his chest, low and steady. Gustav cleared his throat. "The Baron arrives within the hour. He'll expect a second. I'll stand in. I thought only nobles." "I've stood for worse," Gustav said. "And Richter plays a tradition more than he honors it." Julian looked to Marguerite. "You trust him?" "I trust no one," she said. "But I believe he wants to see the Baron humiliated." Julian tightened his grip on the pistol. As the sun crept up behind the glass panes of the orangery, Baron Richter arrived in a lacquered landau drawn by 4 dark horses. His coat was trimmed in sable, and his hat bore a red feather, absurdly bright against the gray sky. He stepped down without assistance, inspecting the arrangement as if it were a matter of logistics, not lives. He did not greet Marguerite, only looked once at her, and said, "You've brought me a servant?" Gustav stepped forward. "He is no less than you." Richter's mouth curved with disdain. "He is less in every measurable sense." Julian raised the pistol slowly, barrel down, ready but not threatening. "Shall we?" Richter turned to his own second, a narrow-faced colonel in full dress uniform, who handed him his weapon. They took their paces. Marguerite stood between Gustav and the colonel, eyes fixed on the snow. Julian felt the weight of the pistol, the cold seeping into his bones. When Gustav gave the signal, the world contracted into a breath. Richter fired first. The shot cracked like a whip, echoing off the glass behind them. Julian flinched, but the ball missed his shoulder by inches, slicing through the sleeve of his coat. He did not hesitate. He raised his arm. He fired. The Baron staggered backward, his pistol clattering to the ground. Blood bloomed at his elbow, dark and immediate. He cursed, loud and inelegant, and sank to one knee. Julian lowered his weapon. His heart pounded in his ears, louder than the wind. Gustav stepped forward. "The matter is resolved." The colonel examined the Baron's wound with a practiced eye. "He'll live, though his pride may not." Richter looked up, face pale. "You'll regret this." Julian didn't respond. He turned to Marguerite, whose expression had not changed since the first shot. "Are you hurt?" she asked, staring at the torn fabric near his arm. "No," he said. "He missed." She stepped closer, her voice low. "You didn't." "What?" Julian looked down at the pistol in his hand. "Because I wanted him to live knowing he lost." She exhaled, long and slow, and reached out to touch the edge of his coat. Her fingers brushed the frayed wool, then curled into a fist. Gustav gathered the weapons. "We should leave. There are too many eyes in daylight." Marguerite nodded. "The chapel garden." At dusk, Julian met her gaze. "I'll be there." She turned to go, cloak trailing over the snow, Gustav following with the case under one arm. The Baron muttered something bitter behind them, but Julian no longer heard him. He had made his choice, and it was not one he would ever undo. The narrow garden behind the chapel was hemmed in by a low brick wall and a hedge of dormant boxwood, brittle with frost. Dusk had softened the edges of the palace grounds, and the oil lamps along the cloister walk flickered gently in the wind. Julian stood beneath the bare branches of a linden tree, brushing a thumb across a patch of dried blood on his shirt cuff. He had not changed. He didn't want to seem like he was arriving for anything other than what this was. Footsteps behind him light, sure. He didn't turn until she spoke. I thought you might not come. I haven't stopped thinking about you since the day you walked into the stables in riding boots too clean to be real. Marguerite stood just within the shadow of the linden tree, her cloak open at the throat. Her hair had been pinned higher tonight, revealing the line of her neck and the faint gold chain that rested against her collarbone. I have a letter from Vienna's archbishop. My uncle pulled strings. It's a betrothal announcement. The date is set for the 4th of March. Her voice was even, but her fingers twisted the edge of her gloves. He signed it yesterday. Julian looked at her hands. Do you want to marry Richter? I didn't come here to answer that. He stepped closer, voice low. Then what did you come for? I needed to see if I imagined everything. She hesitated. The way you looked at me that night. The way my lungs refused to work when you touched me. I've spent years learning how to hold myself in place. You're the first person who's ever made me want to undo that. Julian reached for her gloved hand, hesitated, then let his hand fall again. You don't belong in a life like mine. Then tell me what life I do belong in, she said, eyes steady. Because I've lived 23 years according to someone else's design. Every hour scheduled, every word weighed. I'm tired, Julian. I'm tired of pretending I don't feel things I'm not supposed to. He stared at her, jaw tight. If I take you from this place, you'll lose everything. The pension, the title, your place at court. You'll be just another woman in a rented room, waiting for me to come home smelling like horses. I don't care if I smell of hay and soap for the rest of my life, she said. I care that when you look at me, you see me not my dowry or my surname. Me. A bell rang faintly from the chapel tower. Vespers. Julian stepped into the last of the fading light. Then we leave. Not tonight, but soon. I have a cousin in Trieste. He runs a shipping yard. There's always work, and it's far enough. Far enough that no one will find us, she said, finishing for him. I'll send word to Gustav. He can forge the papers we need. Marguerite blinked quickly. Do you know what my aunt said to me this morning? She said I'm lucky to have a man like Richter, that no one will care about a bruised reputation once I'm wearing diamonds. Julian touched his finger to the edge of her sleeve. I don't have diamonds. I don't wear them, she said. They stood in silence for a long moment, with only the wind tracing through the linden branches above them. When? She asked finally. 3 nights from now. I'll meet you by the back gate near the old aviary. There's an early train that passes through the Kaiserbahnhof before dawn. We'll take it as far as Graz. After that, we stay off the main lines. She nodded once, sharp and certain. I'll be there. Julian stepped back, his hand reluctantly leaving her sleeve. Don't let them see you hesitate. Not once. I won't. He turned, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. But just before he passed through the archway, she called his name. Julian. He turned. I didn't imagine it, she said. Not any of it. He said nothing, but the look he gave her, the quiet, unwavering certainty of it held more than words could bear. Then he slipped into the darkening cloister, and she stood alone beneath the chapel's linden tree, the wind lifting the hem of her cloak like a farewell already in motion. The train station at the edge of the Imperial Game Park lay hidden beneath a low hill and a stand of pine trees that whispered in the wind. The old ironwork platform, used only by freight trains and early couriers, bore the scent of coal smoke and river fog. No lamps had been lit yet. The only light came from the moon, pale and untroubled. Julian stood under the eaves of the signal house, his bag at his feet, collar turned up against the cold. His hands were raw from the work of the day before he'd groomed 6 horses in half the time, told no one where he was going, left his key ring on the hook beside the feed ledger. He watched the tracks. They didn't glint. They breathed quiet steam, like animals at rest. She arrived not by carriage, but on foot, boots muddied, cloak drawn tight around a dark traveling dress. A man followed her at a respectful distance, carrying the small trunk she'd packed beneath her bed 5 nights ago. She walked quickly, not glancing back, her face unpainted, her hair pinned beneath a plain felt hat. Julian stepped out when she drew close enough to see him. She didn't speak right away. She only looked at him in that same unblinking way she had the morning of the duel, as though she were waiting to see if she still existed in the same world as him. He reached for the trunk before the man could set it down. Leave it, Marguerite said. I'll carry it myself. The man bowed, turned, and vanished into the pines. You walked, Julian said. My aunt's lady sleeps through anything if you pour laudanum in her tea, Marguerite answered, brushing a pine needle from her skirt. The guards at the courtyard gate were busy with a delivery from the Tyrol. My uncle prefers smoked trout from one particular village, and it arrives every Monday before dawn. Julian stared at her. You planned this far better than I did. She looked at him then, sharply. I had more to lose. The sound of a slow, heavy engine rose from the south. One lamp, low and yellow, pierced the fog. Julian stepped onto the trackside gravel, signaling with a lifted hand. The train whistled once short, unimpressed, and began to slow. He turned to her. After this, we can't go back. I never intended to. The train hissed to a stop. A conductor leaned out, clearly surprised, but said nothing when Julian passed him a folded note bearing the signature of a shipping guild master from Trieste. They boarded without another word. Julian helped her onto the steps, her gloved hand warm in his. Inside, the cabin was narrow and cold, with wooden benches and a single lamp swaying overhead. He set their bags down and sat across from her, knees nearly touching. She removed her gloves slowly, looking not at him but at the window, where the forest slipped past like a dream dissolving. Did you ever wonder if it would feel different? She asked quietly. What? Freedom. Julian leaned back, folding his arms. I thought it would be louder. She turned to him then, and her face softened. I thought I would cry. The train picked up speed, and the walls trembled slightly. She reached out, not hesitating, and rested her hand on his. His fingers curled around hers. I left a letter, she said. For my cousin. I didn't explain everything. Only enough that she won't waste her life trying to find me. She's smarter than the rest of them. She'll know what I meant. Julian nodded. I told my brother he could have my coat. The one with the silver buttons. Marguerite smiled faintly. He always hated it. Which is why I left it to him. They sat in silence after that, but not the kind that stretches. The kind that settles. Outside, the land dropped into the low valleys of Lower Austria. The snow had thinned, and the moonlight fell in wide silver streaks across the farmlands. A church steeple passed in the distance, followed by a windmill, its sails unmoving. Finally, she spoke again. I was afraid, she said. Every night since the chapel garden, I've woken thinking I'd lost my nerve, that I'd let someone else decide again. You didn't. I know. But fear doesn't always listen to reason. Julian looked at her, not smiling, not speaking, just letting her words find their place. Then, quietly, she said, when you kissed me, you didn't mean to. But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. He didn't move. I kept thinking, she continued. What if that was the only honest moment I ever had? What if I let it pass and lived another 50 years wondering what it had meant? Julian leaned forward, resting one hand on the bench beside her. It meant I was already yours. The lamp above them flickered with the rhythm of the tracks. Outside, the land curved gently toward the southeast. She reached out and touched his cheek, her thumb brushing the line of his jaw. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. She leaned in slowly, and this time, the kiss was not a mistake, but a vow spoken in silence. When the train curved eastward and the first lights of Graz flickered far ahead, Marguerite laid her head against his shoulder, and Julian rested his hand over hers where it lay in her lap. They said nothing more that night. They had already said everything that mattered.